Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Sana Maqbool, with you at PTV WORLD. In today's show, we will be talking about two very important stories. The first story is in relation to what has happened in India after the passing away of Lata Mangeshkar, who's of course a very, very prominent singer. We're all very saddened by her demise. But at her funeral, there was another controversy that was sparked and which led to, of course, the BJP still falling to even more high levels of being low. And also creating religious divide, talking about everything and anything in which they can discriminate against a particular religion or people belonging to a particular faith. And even though it is a prominent personality, as we've seen in the past, the BJP government refuses to back down on the way that its Hindutva ideology is being propagated within India. Farrukh Khan offered his condolences at the funeral of Lata Mangeshkar. He also offered prayers on the funeral, and as a customary practice, he also blew in the air, which sparked a lot of controversy, and BJP leaders talked about this in terms of spitting in the funeral of Lata Mangeshkar. This, of course, has been responded by a lot of fans speaking against these claims, talking about how this is a customary practice after a prayer, and it points towards the ignorance of the BJP leaders, but perhaps it points towards more than just ignorance or stupidity. It also points towards how they have zero tolerance and how they will come up with any sort of a story to change the way that any positive thing can be seen performed by a Muslim. We'll talk in further detail regarding how, of course, this shows the Modi regime and the Hindutva ideology seeping into India and not even sparing the big personalities of India. We'll also be taking a look at the situation within Pakistan. Just recently, we know there has been a spike in terror attacks within our country. We've seen these terrorist incidents happen in Balochistan, and our troops responding befittingly and also, of course, avoiding a lot of the harm that the terrorists could have caused, in which a lot of our armed personnel have also laid down their lives and have been martyred in the exchange of fire. Prime Minister Imran Khan and General Qamar Javed Bajwa went to Balochistan earlier today, and they talked to the troops. They met there and they also addressed FC and talked about how, of course, the sacrifices of these brave soldiers have led to where Pakistan is right now and the peace that we all stand within. This is, of course, very important for our country, but we also need to work on a lot with regards to the security situation and what can be done in terms of uplifting and developing the province of Balochistan, something that Prime Minister also talked about. He also talked about a raise, a 15% raise in the salaries of the armed personnel, and said that in the next phase of CPEC, post his visit to China and his meeting with Xi Jinping, there has been talk about how it's going to further benefit the province of Balochistan. So here's to looking at the future of Balochistan in a more positive light. We'll talk about that in further detail as well. As always, in the studios with me is Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal. As part of the show, we have also been joined in the debate by respected guests online. We've been joined by Hamid Khan, who's a senior analyst, and we've also been joined by Rohit Sharma, who's an Indian journalist who's also a regular on our show. But before we move on to our guests and start talking about what is going on in India, we also have another video to play for you, another incident in which we see a Muslim girl is being harassed on the streets by a mob of Hindu boys who are chanting slogans against her wearing the burqa and making her feel demonized within her country, and her also chanting in response to that. Let's take a look at that first before we talk about these issues in further detail.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
quite troubling to say the least, what is going on and what the girl would have gone through. Rohit, with both of the stories that, with regards to India that we have on our debate today, with reference to this girl, and then of course what has been going on with regards to Shah Rukh Khan offering his prayers at the funeral, I'm really glad that we have you on the show, because I'm hoping that on today's show we'll have nothing to disagree about, and we're both on the same page with regards to how both of these acts are just not acceptable. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have lost.
What this was, what the gesture of Shah Rukh Khan was, tweeted later on, what happened was that BJP came out, few leaders of BJP came out in support of Shah Rukh Khan, right? Firstly, some leaders, one or two persons, one was Prashant Umrao and another one was Arun Yadav. Perhaps they did not know the reality that what is this gesture. And when the BJP told us, when the BJP leaders, I can name quite a few who came out on Twitter and on other handles, other social media handles, they said that this is a gesture which actually is done by every Muslim after condolence, right? So then everything died down. One or two persons came out; those were leaders. Of course, I will not say that they were not BJP leaders. They were, but they did not know, because every small nitty-gritty, these Hindu leaders, they do not understand. Now they know it, and in fact, they have also not been saying anything. No. Secondly, coming to this lady's video, a wonderful video where there are around 100 people right in front of her, and she's screaming Allahu Akbar. Those persons are right in front of her. Did anybody touch her? Did anybody try to harm? They were just 2 feet away from her in the end of the video. Nobody said anything. Did you see that?
Rohit,
should we
one second,
wait
Faisal,
until somebody touches her? Should we wait?
And more than that, does harassment only come into place when there is touching involved? Come on, you know better than that.
This is the worst form of harassment.
I was answering, and my answer was disrupted. Now tell me, do the Muslims have the right there? Do the Muslims have the right to speak? Then why do Pakistani journalists or Pakistan say that Muslims do not have any right? She has all the rights and nobody said anything to her. They were screaming, she was screaming. One lady, 100
Are you
people.
honestly telling me?
Hang on, my friend, you are talking about a woman who is being subjected to mob rule, and because of her courage, she is still there. You are telling me that women are free here?
Rohit, instead of commending her courage, you are blaming the victim, who's obviously going through a traumatic experience.
Rohit, let me tell you, she was not screaming. She was defying the lawlessness of today's India. This is what she was doing.
Sorry. Nobody can hijack the debate. Sorry. My answer is not complete. Now, coming to the point, look at it. That she was alone. Did anybody say anything to her? Who says that Muslims do not have the right to speak here? This is very clear. One person speaking in front of 100 people. What happened in Sialkot? We know it. What happened? We know.
Rohit, what were those 100 people doing there?
And Rohit, they did say something to her. Maybe you didn't see the video, honestly, because you're talking about something else. Yes, Hamid Saab.
Sana. Thank you very much. I am really surprised from the reply of Rohit. Instead of saluting that brave girl, he's trying to blame her for her bravery. It is very shameful and very sad, to be honest. And if he says that the mob was not trying to, touch her or anything, he needs to see the whole video where people were stopping, so many people who wanted to attack her. And it's a harassment. It's the worst form of harassment. He needs to understand, one. Secondly, I would say that this is the new India. He must have seen the speech of Rahul Gandhi just 2 days ago, that he has clearly told that there are two Indias now. I say the same. There are two Indias. One is extreme Hindu ideology India, and one is anybody who's not Hindu for India. And one who's not Hindu, India has become a hell for them. It is the fact which he needs to understand, which world needs to understand. Second thing is, Sana, if you look into the incident, what they did with Shah Rukh Khan, it shows
Right.
that what lower level of ethics they have got now. Where from rising or shining India, it has gone to the doomed India now. And he's saying that there were some BJP leaders condemned her, condemned Arun Yadev. Why don't he talk about those people who appreciated him, who added the fire into it? Why does not Rohit look into those tweets? And Rohit is saying that matter was died down. No, I was offered to take part in 2 programs about Shah Rukh Khan's incident. All over the media it was covered. So media is
absolutely.
following the Hindutva ideology. Media is under so much control by BJP. It is so embarrassing. It is so humiliating for
Rohit,
the
honestly,
people who are
we're
living
talking
there.
about a
They have
very
made the
serious
hell
matter. So I
there.
would love if you could explain your laughter to me, because honestly, we feel the pain for
Honestly
this woman
speaking,
there.
instead
Even if
of
you don't
being-
salute her,
instead of
don't
being
salute her.
embarrassed,
But
and
at
Rohit
least
should
accept
not
what's
laugh on it. He should be
what's happening
embarrassed
to her
on
is
it
wrong.
that where India is heading under the leadership of Modi. Where India is heading under the leadership of Modi. This is what embarrassment India is getting from all over the world. Instead of understanding the problem that India is going to be ended up into many states, as Rahul Gandhi has said now, that India is a union of states. India is not a nation. This is the thing you need to understand in your own
Right.
Rahul Gandhi's
And
words.
Rohit,
Hamid, if you allow me, I would like to go towards Rohit now. I just wanted to clear a bit of picture to him what happened there. India's constitution, it gives the rights to that girl. Fair enough, it gives. The secular India's constitution, it gives the right. This is what I'm trying to say. In the very college, we have a Hindutva ideology persisting there, and the students who were chanting Jai Shri Ram and who were there in support of banning all of these girls wearing hijab and not getting into classes, and they were there to impose their own ideology on everyone else. And Indian secular constitution disagrees with that. But here we have Rohit. I would like to know from you, do you agree with them, or do you agree with your own constitution, the secular constitution?
I will give you the answer. Yeah, I'll give you the answer if nobody speaks in between.
Go
Now,
on.
Sir, we cannot
We'll try.
vacate the
We'll
entire
try, Rohit,
program.
because
You'll
honestly-
have to
Sense,
finish
I
your
will not interrupt
comment
you.
also.
we'll try, Rohit, because honestly, what you're saying really calls for responses. But go ahead.
Exactly.
if I will talk sense, he will not disturb. I will say he was also not talking sense because he was quoting Rahul Gandhi. Is he equal to Rahul Gandhi? Because what Rahul Gandhi said, I don't understand. Nation word is used in the preamble of the constitution. Now coming to point.
You
coming to-
condemn
coming-
Rahul Gandhi then. I don't mind.
All
I'm
right,
using the Rahul
perhaps
Gandhi's
Hamid
words.
Sahib, not all arguments need to be responded to. Yes, Rohit.
Sorry. When he has not read the constitution, why is he quoting him? Can he
Let's
quote?
come to the
Can he
video.
quote
Let's
Osama
come
bin
back to the
Laden?
video, Rohit.
No.
I'm
Just a minute.
quoting
Just a
his
minute.
video and speech. That's it.
No. Just a minute. Many constitution, many experts in India or many politicians in India have said that this is a Hindu Rashtra. He should quote that they are correct. Why is he not quoting them? Now, coming to the point. What Faisal said. He said
You
the
carry
Indian
on.
constitution gives the right. Can somebody speaking?
Not at all, Rohit.
He
We're
said
listening.
He said Indian constitution gives the right. Very good. And she used the right. But does Pakistani constitution give the right to
Come on,
anybody
Rohit.
to
We've asked you a
anybody-
question. We've asked you a question about your constitution. We've asked you a question about your constitution,
Rohit,
Rohit.
this is bigger than India and Pakistan. We're talking about humanity.
It is not about Indo-Pak.
No, hang on.
It is about humanity.
Because you asked a question. One, Pakistani constitution also allows its
Exactly.
minorities the right to practice their religion.
Why
But
wouldn't
your
it?
Article 19, your Article 21, and then repeated judgments from the courts allow women to wear hijab. Then why was this girl being hounded? And it doesn't frighten me, sir, that such people are there. What frightens me is like a journalist and civil society like you are actually trying to marginalize the case.
Yeah,
And
At least you can stand up
You
against
can't seem
this
to
injustice.
understand the problem here, Rohit. Do you see the
Rohit?
problem here? The situation is not equal. It's not fair.
Rohit, my friend, let me tell you, the day you banned the girls to enter in the college class, you know, the very day in Pakistan, one of the senators, the Hindu female senators, she was the chairperson at that day in our Senate.
And
this is what I'm trying to tell you.
Sanad, let me say only one thing, that I fully understand what trauma Rohit is going through. If he speaks truth, he would not even be able to live in India, because India has become a country who is making a Godse, a terrorist who killed Gandhi, hero. Now the Godse is the new hero, while the Gandhi's character is undermined, who's the father of the nation of India. They are undermining, they are defaming Gandhiji as compared to the killer who killed Gandhi. So this is the nation, India's nation is heading towards a very dark future, because they are even undermining their own father of the nation, Gandhi, and they are having the idols of Godse and worshipping, and all this happening under the BJP leadership. This is the only thing we need to understand, and we
Rohit,
need to explain.
Rohit, before I let you respond, let me also add into that, when we talk about the situation with the video in which Shah Rukh Khan is accused of spitting, perhaps when you said the political leaders may not be aware of the custom and whatnot, can we really brush this off and dismiss this as something that was due to ignorance or not knowing about something, and something that has been said? Have we had any sort of an explanation from their side? Have we had any sort of apologies? Do we have any political responsibility in checking the facts or making sure that you're making a statement from a position of power or influence and saying something right that might not hurt the sentiments of your own people and the rest of the world as well? At least the political responsibility part should be there, even
Very
if they
valid
are
question.
ignorant, no?
Sanaji, I came to your show after cancelling one meeting, right? And
I
this is the
respect that.
second
Thank
time
you.
I am not being allowed to speak. When I was answering, your panelists started speaking. When they were speaking, I was quiet. So either you teach them some decency. If one person is speaking, they should not speak. I have a right to answer. If I'm not given a right to answer, if I start speaking and they start speaking, because as soon as they start speaking, my voice becomes low, or your PCR dims my voice. I don't know. But they,
Rohit, that's a lot of big talk coming from an Indian journalist. Come on, we've
doesn't
extended
have
you
to be.
everything,
I face
everything
all
which
this
is
every day.
decent. You cannot expect that, Rama.
Rohit, please, your response, please.
It's your channel. You can speak 24 hours. Who says you can't speak? You have a right to speak there. But if you called me to listen to me. And when I started speaking about Sialkot, these people, I don't know why. Are they on the payroll of some extremist organization or something like that? I don't know. Or TLP.
condemned it.
Absolutely, Rohit.
I don't know. To be honest, I mean, at this moment, one is already pained, and you ask a question about Pakistani constitution in this program, sitting all people condemned Sialkot, and we keep on doing it. Can you actually reciprocate the same decency by condemning what was happening to that girl in your country?
Very fair.
I have shown extreme decency when you were speaking. I was quiet. But the problem is you have not shown even a single point of decency.
With the exception of answering your question, I haven't spoken throughout the program. If you want to just control everything in the world, please do it.
Rohit, you're just wasting precious time. You need to respond to the argument.
No, I have the right to answer first of all, and you are not allowing me to do that.
So
That's what we're saying.
And
Please go.
when I start speaking, you people intervene. That's the problem. I was saying that she has the right. India's constitution gave her the right, and she had the right. But was this right given to that Sri Lankan? She was burnt alive. And Pakistan is blaming us. Pakistan is pointing fingers. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Law is taking its course in Pakistan regarding that case.
What?
Everyone condemned it.
Again, you people are intervening.
Because
Now,
you're
should be
misquoting,
against-
misreporting
Rohit,
this.
okay, let us
You're a
be clear
journalist.
first. Let us be clear first. This is not a classroom. We're not going to be taking turns. The show is called The Debate, and we'll be responding to each other. Why don't you also jump in when the rest of my analysts are speaking? How about that? Let's put it fair like that way. Nobody's going to be listening quietly to what you're saying when your response is not valid.
No,
He's
it is not.
having a false argument and baseless argument. That's the only thing I want to explain.
And by the way, since you were talking about Sialkot, Priyanta Kumara, then of course Pehlu Khan was there in your country. I'm not going to blame you for anything, right? My humble submission is at least condemn what was going on today. This
Right.
is a bare minimum of decency.
The only
think he's
response,
left.
the only response, of course, that's his call. But the only response, of course, is at the moment when we see any such thing happening anywhere in the world, even if it's within your own country, the natural response of a government who's there to protect its citizens is to respond fairly, is to condemn an incident. That's the bare minimum someone can do.
Sana-
You don't have to justify every act that's happened on your
Sana,
ground.
why I'm worried, previously we didn't see it in the colleges and in the universities, but now, of course, from all of these organizations, they have injected hate within their students, within their youth, and this is happening right now in today's India. And South, which is considered as a sort of breathing ground of India, where these sort of precedents, they were never found in past, but now it is happening there.
Yeah.
And the students are doing it, and when it gets in the hands of the students, it gets rogue, and this is going to happen in India. That's why we are worried, and this is what we were trying to tell Rohit. But
No,
Rohit
and
was not
honestly,
admitting it.
Rohit's response is what's more worrisome, and who he represents, as Farrukh said, is a bigger problem here. That when we expect the sane of voices in India to at least be able to see reality as it is, to speak objectively, and to call a spade, we don't see that. Then there's hardly any hope that we have for the country. Hamid sir?
Exactly. I mean, Sana, that's the very valid point. That unfortunately, there are hardly any sane voices in India left, even in media, even in politics, and especially when it comes to the incidents like that. They try to defend it with very, very vague and very, very, I should say, silly arguments. They are not even justifiable. On the other hand, as I'm saying, that if you look into the entire fabric of the Indian society now, it has become a very extremist society. And this is the society has changed the whole nation's attitude and their behavior. Their youngsters are hating to everybody who's non-Hindu. They have trained them to force everybody to be Hindu or just to be hated. This is a very, very marginalizing all the minorities there. It is showing that, like Pitafi Sahib was asking very valid questions, that you're not answering the question. He's not condemning what that brave girl went through. I mean, that brave girl, I salute that brave girl for chanting and for calling Allahu Akbar against these goons. And they were talking, and it has come an everyday practice in India now. We have seen many videos where they have cut the beards of the Muslims, where they have forced them to call, Jai Shri Ram, where they have lynching, they are lynching the Muslims. So this is
let me mention
who
here.
India is heading towards.
Hamid, let me mention here, as earlier, Brother Farrukh, he rightly mentioned, talking to Rohit, that I think Rohit, even you won't condemn it because even you would be scared of your own people doing that.
I said
But
the same.
Hamid,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
I think
it was his point.
Yeah, I think Hamid, we have a long-term, obviously, working relation with Rohit, and we very well know that he's a decent man. If a decent man like Rohit Sharma, he can't, do it, then how can we expect from the other Indians to do it? This is the problem which is happening in India, in today's India. And if they are stopping Muslim girls from wearing hijab in schools or in universities or in colleges today, I'm pretty much sure that tomorrow they would be seeking the same from Sikhs as well. Sikh would not be allowed to wear their own turbans because that is what represents Sikhs in India. This is going to take place. and everything is heading towards a disaster for India. That's why we are highlighting it, and Rohit needs to understand
Absolutely.
that.
And the problem with this, of course, is when there's a victim involved at any length or at any sort of problems that they go through, you can still find a fault in them. That's so dangerous. Yes, Farrukh.
Right. Sana, actually, when you are actually looking at this debate, it is going on in India as well. There are 2 or 3 things that are happening, right? On one side, of course, this girl is being presented as an emblem of a cultural other, and then being shown that Islam doesn't integrate and have everything.
Right.
And then there are so-called moderates like Shekhar Gupta and others who are saying that this is a regressive thing and you should be supporting the idea of banning it. The problem, do you know what is the actual problem? Controlling women's bodies. From Kabul to Karnataka, there are people who want to police women's bodies and what to wear, what not to wear.
There's no freedom of choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they keep on trying to actually sell it as progressive agenda item, which is wrong, right? On one side, this is happening, and then in India, when you talk about elections, because elections are coming, this is a very effective distraction also. Because by culturally othering people, by creating this tamasha, they actually take the attention away from something else, that is poor performance. You were talking about Lata Mangeshkar. She was 92, but do you know how did she die? She didn't die of natural causes. She died of COVID-19. Whose failure is this? The government's, right? And the moment you realize this, it reminds you of what happened when UP and their waters were full of dead bodies because people kept on dumping it there. Elections are going to take place in UP. So all this facade is because of that. But the saddest part is this girl who was standing there. This was India's Rosa Parks moment, where she is asking for control over her own body.
Right.
And yet India does not even know how to handle it.
Right, and as you said, this is a problem that's in every part of the world, but in India it seems that they want to control every single person over there as well and turn them into same ideological beings. Yes, Hamid Saab, you want to add something? Fortunately, I think we may have lost contact with
he came back.
You're here, yes.
No, yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to say one thing, that as I always say, that this India, this India under the Modi's government is getting worse in terms of religious freedom, in terms of human rights, in terms of rights for the people, and this is going to be worse every coming day unless we will see some sane voices from India. Rahul Gandhi's speech was very much alarming for the public of people of India. If they are not going to listen to it, yes, as I'm saying for many years, that Modi is going to be known as Gorbachev of India. This will come true very soon because of its own policies, because of Indian fascist government policies. There is nobody else to blame but Modi itself, but BJP itself.
That, of course, is a frightening trajectory that India is on. Thank you so much, Hamid Khan Saab, for being with us in the show and being part of the debate. And, of course, also Rohit Sharma for being a part of the debate as well. And we wish you would have stayed longer with us and be part of the discussion with us as
Very
always.
quickly,
yes.
Since he was talking about balkanization of India, to be honest, there are many forms of death. And balkanization is one thing, but the ideal for which the country was created and the way it is going south is astounding. The girl they are saying was regressive actually came alone on a scooty, and she stood in front of 100 goons. People keep on saying that they were students. They were not students. They were grown up adult goons who were there to actually frighten her.
Right.
And there was something good as well. By the way, the teacher and the fellow students actually escorted these girls back outside the school later on. So there is some decency, but you can see what is going on today's India. That was
Of course,
obnoxious.
and here's to hoping that more of such people prevail within India and in other parts of the world as well, and we see the good that keeps on happening, and hopefully that there is hope for the people in India who are suffering, of course, at the hands of these ideologists. We need to also talk about our second segment, which is, of course, in relation to what is going on within Pakistan as well. In our recent discussions in our show, we have talked about what has been going on in Balochistan and the kind of terrorist threats that Pakistan is continuing to be faced with regards to what has happened in Balochistan as well just recently. A lot of our armed personnel have also embraced martyrdom in these recent attacks, have also responded befittingly as always, and are pride for our nation. But of course, there is a lot that needs to be done on the front of Balochistan and of course our security situation within Pakistan as well. When we speak about Balochistan province in particular and the way that the security situation has evolved over there, we see that of course Pakistan is trying to step up its security arrangements and its measures against such elements within the province as well. And Farrukh, this is something that we've talked about before as well as to what needs to be done on a national front and how to respond to them. But with particular reference to what can be done with the situation in Balochistan, not just in terms of security enhancement, but of course the development of the province, what measures can Pakistan be taking in this regard? Let me also, just before you answer that, welcome in our show President IPRI, Brigadier Retired Mr. Rashid Bali Junjua, who's joined us online. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us on the show. Yes, Farrukh.
Right. I'm not going to take too much of your time, but before I actually talk merely about what can be done, let me first hail and praise the fact that the Prime Minister of Pakistan was there, Army Chief was there. Remember, at this moment, standing with your soldiers and actually supporting them is very important because there seems to be this tendency in our media to complicate very easy things, right? On one side are terrorists who are killing us, on the other side are heroes who are actually fighting and dying to save our lives. So we should be standing with our heroes, right? But having said that, now we have to talk about Balochistan situation where you have terrorist acts taking place and these terrorists are hiding somewhere. So you'll have to clear the areas out. The second phase is actually what you were talking about, development, but I will call it integration.
Okay.
Because for a very long time, Balochistan was divided into Area A and Area B. And Area B was where you didn't have regular police. So you'll have to standardize that as well. And the third problem, Sana, the reason why Balochistan has been going through all these pains is corruption. Smuggling because of the porous border and then corruption on both sides, right? In the civilian administration, if you remember, there was a finance secretary who was caught with humongous bags of cash, right? And then he was caught. So you'll have to ensure that corrupt people are smoked out. Without that, all this development expenditure that you send there will not be spent on the people. Finally, you have to have a dialogue. Over to you.
Brigadier Rashid, this is of course quite laudable what the Prime Minister and the Army Chief have done, because this is a time, as Farrukh said, to stand with our soldiers, and a cabinet meeting was also cancelled for this visit as well. But how do we also enhance our security response in Balochistan province, because of course this has been the center point of the recent terrorist attacks in the country?
Thank you very much. I think it was a much needed step taken by Prime Minister that he went to Nushki and Panjgore and also announced certain incentives for the troops who are fighting this militancy. That was all very good. So answer to your question, how this response could be improved. I think the improvement would depend upon the kind of threat that we are facing. And we need to shore up our on-spot resistance capacity of the posts that are deployed in this vast geographic expanse. Then we need to be more proactive on intelligence-based operations. And we need to take the battle to these militants and their sanctuaries and their handlers too. We know from where this sustenance is coming. It is essentially a foreign-funded insurgency, and there's a host of foreign intelligence agencies involved, which includes RAW, which includes some countries that might be otherwise our allies, but they have different interests. So we have to now take into cognizance all those factors, and we perhaps need to now increase the quantum of troops as well, and the technological means like surveillance capabilities and other essentials, which we have been using very successfully in former FATA. We have the necessary wherewithal. It's all a question of refocusing our energies, because for far too long this militancy kept simmering. There were sleeper cells, and at one point of time the back was broken essentially in 2011 to 14, the operations that were conducted against these outfits. But then perhaps our focus was shifted to KP and former FATA, and that allowed these outfits to regroup. Now, after the US withdrawal also, the Taliban government is not been able to control the ungoverned spaces from where they are operating, and their sanctuaries, which are in Afghanistan, and in some cases they have crossed over from Iran also. So we need to take care of all these factors together.
Since you were talking about improving or actually increasing the number of soldiers in Balochistan, I wanted you to explain us the logistics, because Balochistan is a humongous landmass. It is 44% of Pakistan's total territory, right? And it has mountainous areas and very sparse population. In that situation, these two things, increasing soldiers there and also surveillance, how does that work? What kind of mechanism can be used there?
You see, each and every inch cannot be manned physically. You have appreciation of the important areas to be defended, and there the posts are established where the troops are in physical presence, and the gaps are always covered by surveillance means, by drones, by aerial means as well, and by technological means, ground patrolling. So all those factors are to be used in unison. Then the quantum of your troops for your offensive capability. For example, if you are attacked and you need to go into intelligence-based operations, you've got to have those troops which you have for this offensive capability. So some beefing up in terms of number of troops, and a lot in terms of surveillance means, technological equipment, use of aerial surveillance, use of drone surveillance, and use of your physical intelligence assets, and a network, your human network, that is the most important network. It's rejuvenation, it's reactivation, and better border control, and there's a lot of smuggling, narco smuggling going on. Yeah. So in that garb also there's a lot of cross-border movement. So a better response.
If you can allow me, sir, as you have earlier rightly mentioned that obviously Pakistan needs to hypen up its IBOs, intelligence-based operations. They need to be hyped up inside Pakistan. But I wanted to know, should Pakistan go towards conducting IBOs for the external security as well, outside of the borders if needed, if required, and should Pakistan also use any available resource related to diplomacy, talking to our neighboring countries, sir?
Of course, you need to use diplomacy, you need to convince Afghan government, you need to talk to...
Only Afghan, sir? What about Iran?
Yes, Iran also, I'm coming to that. You need to sensitize them of the importance and of the ground developments. And you need to tell them categorically to squeeze the space for the militants operating from their areas. And we should not mince our words on that score.
Right, and Brigadier Rashid, we've done that, but we also see just recently a Taliban spokesperson has talked about how Afghanistan soil is not being used against Pakistan, and Pakistan needs to resolve its internal issues via dialogue. How do we respond to that?
You need to be more persuasive with them. and you need to impress upon them the need for possibly joint operations inside Afghan territory where these sanctuaries exist. And we should confront them with clear evidence.
Evidence, yeah.
And impress upon them the need for possibly covert operations on Afghan soil.
All right. Speaking of dialogue, this is something that we've debated with my analysts in the studio as well, as to how we should proceed forward with these elements within Pakistan as well. Is dialogue really an option for us, or should we go ahead with military action in terms of clearing out these hideouts, as you were earlier talking about?
Dialogue is always an option. It should never be taken off the table, but dialogue with whom? Dialogue with those who have, accepted the constitutional scheme of things, or those who do not believe, and those who are being handled by foreign intelligence agencies. So dialogue with them is futile. I think the only language they only understand one language, and that is the language of power. And with those elements, you cannot enter into a dialogue and offer amnesty. You can only fight with them, and then those Sardars who are pro-state, and there is a lot of them in Balochistan who have fought for the state against these militants, and they have laid down their lives. There are, tribal Sardars like Sarfaraz Bukti, who has sacrifice of over 350 people for the cause of state. So we should make a common cause with them, and for them, all the avenues, talks, incentives, and assuaging of their deprivations, etc., and use of political instrument should be kept open. But for those elements who are incorrigible, who are confirmed anti-state, foreign-funded, I think the right course is to go very strongly against them in kinetic war.
Right. Brigadier Sahab, if I ask you to actually give me an answer off the top of your head, one reason why why Balochistan is the way it is, what will be your explanation, sir?
Afghanistan is the
No,
way
sir,
it
Balochistan.
is because of its tribal dynamics. It's unlike any other province of the country, and we also know that 50% of Balochistan is Pashtun inhabited. There's no insurgency there. It's only in the Baloch areas. Why is it so? We need to ponder this question. There are specific tribal dynamics at play, and there are certain elements which are playing in the hands of foreign agencies. We need to take care of those. And then the political deprivation and the political representation issue, joblessness, human security angles, all need to be taken care of on development front. So both these prongs should be used.
So what you are saying is the failure to modernize the tribal areas in Balochistan is the reason, right, sir? And the biggest bottleneck must be corruption?
Corruption is embedded in the whole structure. The tribal incentives, there's no dearth of money being spent. It's only the big mismanagement. Most of the things by development funds, etc., they go in the hands of these Sardars. And we know the state tried to streamline, mainstream Harbiar Mari, Balash Mari. They were brought back in 2000. I think 10 or 12, and they were even given ministries. But despite having that, they were working for the anti-state elements. So things are very clear that the tribal dynamics and corruption, they are intertwined, and this is the structure that we need to confront and fight in order to go for a lasting solution.
Brigadier Rashid, when you speak about different tribal dynamics playing a prominent role, of course, in Balochistan province, and when we talk about developing this entire area and also beefing up the security situation there, do we have a major role for the tribal elders to play in the plan forward? Where do we and how do we inculcate the tribal elders into our way forward in terms of developing a strategy for the Balochistan province?
The way forward is an inclusive dialogue with them, because 80% of them are pro-Pakistan and they are not stirring any problems, and they have been adequately incentivized. There are 20% of those who are truculent, who have taken up arms against the state. They need to be read the Riot Act and given very clear options that if they want to join the mainstream, they need to play by certain rules. And those rules are inclusivity, political participation, and development. And if they don't play by those rules, then the state should take its, coercive arm and deal with them.
Right.
Yeah, Brigadier Rashid, if you
I just very quickly wanted to comment here, make a comment here. I think Brigadier Saab has pointed out very correctly that between 2011 and 2014, there was a window for dialogue, but that has passed. We have been going through this revolving door of dialogue for quite some time. With due respect, we keep on talking about tribal elders. They have an advantage, they are never going to surrender it. When you talk about a relationship between a state and its subjects, it should be direct. And there has to be a local government which should be empowered, and there should be direct dialogue with the common people. With that, it will happen, but that will happen when you have gotten rid of two monsters, terrorism and second, corruption. And corruption on both sides, because there will be people who are extremists and who are corrupt, and they become extremists because they want to be corrupt and they want to hide their corruption.
Right. Faisal,
because you keep on fighting.
Quick question.
Yeah,
Last
quick question,
to you.
Brigadier Junjua. We know that, and we have the evidence as well, that our eastern neighbor, clandestinely, he's been doing a lot in Balochistan. Now we know that we have the evidence. Should we reciprocate? Should we employ the same tactics in Indian fault line, sir?
You see, Ajit Doval is on record having said that we'll set Balochistan ablaze, and we have got money for that. Now we should be very clear as to who is doing it, and all options should be there on the table for us, and we know how to reciprocate. Whether we take the battle to the enemy, whether we take care of our vulnerabilities here, all options should be on the table, and we must marshal all resources to go very strongly against this menace.
Thank you so much, Brigadier Rashid Junjua, for being with us on the debate and taking the time out. On the debate, we have had a lot to discuss today, but of course the take home should be that we all should have the patience and the courage to deal with the situation, just as the girl in the video from India has shown us to do, in spite of what we are faced with and the amount of disagreements we see and the harsh realities that we see. And we hope that as responsible journalists, this is something that everybody in our community can actually do as well, to call out what it is that is not acceptable in any part of the world. That's all from the debate for the moment. Thank you so much for watching us. We'll see you again tomorrow at 9 p.m.